lot of male bosses, there's great discomfort in trying to make them understand, or communicating or being honest with them, which I've faced.
Hmm.
And there's a certain sense of, there's a certain patronizing big boys club energy. I mean, I have to admit that working under a female boss never made me feel like an outsider. Hi, Raji.
Hi, Shivani. So, we're here today to talk about, well, friendships that come out of work, like ours. We were
Yeah.
colleagues for like so many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And now it feels like we were never colleagues, we were always just friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I still clearly remember the first time I spoke to you, which was in Scoop.
Yeah.
And I think I was going a little jabber, jabber, jabber. And you were listening to me. And then I felt like, okay, have I spoken too much? Because I don't know, your vibe was such that I just managed to just open up without even taking into consideration, is she even interested in listening to what? And I knowing you were there, like you were listening, and then I was like, okay, it's just, I don't know this person and she knows nothing about me. And I'm literally like, I'm narrating my whole life without any warning. I'm going to stop now. But I feel like over time we just like got closer, and I think that like this verbal diarrhea that I had was, in retrospect, a good decision.
Yeah, I think it was a great decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't get this whole thing about how we're told that female colleagues cannot be friends. Women are too catty
Hmm.
to work and be friends with each other. I really don't
Hmm.
think that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
I have you. There's Purva also that I met
Hmm.
at work. Uh,
Yeah.
there's another great friend that I've made at Juggernaut now, Swarnima.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
these are like real friendships.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
just like I said, you just forget that there is also that work colleague dynamic.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
and like you and I haven't been working together now for a while. It's been what, a
Yeah.
year and a half? No, 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
been 2 years. But even when
Yeah.
we were colleagues, whatever, for whatever that was worth, it didn't. I think it was maybe only the first couple of months at Scoop Whoop that mattered, and then after that, it
Yeah.
stopped mattering.
Yeah. Like, I think once we got to IDIVA, and I think we also ended up spending a lot of our car journeys together. I
Yeah,
think that was also maybe the time where I realized that, man, I really like, spending a Herculean amount of time with you
yeah,
doesn't feel like work. Like, it doesn't, like, I literally spend the whole day chilling with you, either in silence or talking, and it feels like I know this person,
yeah,
since forever. Like, it never felt like we were colleagues after a point.
yeah,
And even though we were working in the same team under the same umbrella, like, there was never any petty competition or insecurity at play. Like, I
yeah.
think it was a very healthy, cohesive, environment, that, or a very good vibe that we sort of like had between the two of us, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, at least for me, I don't know about you, but for me, you were like this saving grace at work a lot of times. That this
Same,
moment.
dude. I remember when you quit, I was so disoriented for the first 2 months. I was like, I have no idea what to do with myself. Because, you were literally there at every step of my office routine.
Yeah.
Right from my day when it would start, messaging you, coordinating our timings, to getting into the car, coming to work, then maybe going out for chai or having lunch or coordinating work or whatever,
Yeah.
and then stepping out for a walk after lunch. Like, everything
Yeah.
had you in it.
Yeah.
So when you left, I was like, I have never felt so lonely in the universe. It was so sad. It
Yeah.
took me a while to sort of like recalibrate, like my
Yeah.
life in that office space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I'm sure. I hope you didn't replace me with
not at
someone.
all, dude.
Colleague friends are so important for your mental
Yeah,
health. I can't
yeah.
imagine
Hmm.
working in a setup where you don't have a single friend. Like, I can't
Yeah,
imagine what that would be like. We spend most
yeah.
of our waking life at work.
Hmm.
And if
Yeah,
you don't have even one person that you get along
yeah,
well with,
yeah.
I really cannot imagine how you would survive that.
Yeah, and as much as we put this pressure of being professional and not getting too involved, and I've always, maintained a certain distance from my colleagues in life, because I don't know, it's just, I mean, it's a bit of a khichdi sometimes when you mix your personal and professional and take it too far.
Hmm.
But yeah, like thankfully for me, at every step of the way, somehow managed to meet people in various organizations that I've worked with whom friendship has actually been so organic that it never felt like, okay, this is invading any space, or it's just
Hmm.
overstepping a certain level of comfort or whatever, like.
Hmm.
So, and I think with you specifically, I shared that,
Hmm.
in IDEVA, even in HT and a few other places that I've worked at, I've had one or two people who were literally like my people.
Yeah.
So in spite of the ups and downs in those ecosystems, like, those people sort of like kept me happy in the larger scheme of things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kept me going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
to know that you have somebody at work who's in your corner,
Hmm.
who's got your back
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
both at work and out
Yes.
and outside of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that colleague friendships or work friendships are kind of wholesome in that sense as well, right?
Hmm.
Because you don't
Yeah.
have to, you at least have this one person or two or three people with whom you can really share all of your life. You can't do that
Yeah.
with your partner, you can't do that with your
Exactly.
family, you
Yeah.
can't do that with, a colleague you're not friends with.
Yeah.
You have a colleague friend, you can share, like you can have, you can go out drinking with them, but you can also like sit through ghastly nasty meetings with them and sit and process that with them. You can like
Yeah.
always getting stuck in the traffic like you and
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
take vacations together like you and I did.
Yeah. No, and I think what also getting perspective on the things that go on at work.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I think one of the downsides of you leaving was that sometimes through a lot of the things that would happen,
Hmm.
which would really like throw me off,
Hmm.
I had no one to sort of like consult and be like, am I imagining this? Like, do you feel this is as odd as I feel? And I feel like losing you to a different job was probably, this was one of the, like, at least professionally, it was a huge setback for me because I was like, I have no one to speak to about what I'm going
Yeah.
through. I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
And you really helped me in that sense, like
Yeah.
not just give perspective on my personal life choices, but also like things happening, in office, which if I were to share with anyone, like my mother's easiest reply and, rejoinder to any tricky situation at work is, maybe you have done something wrong to trigger this. And I'm like, thanks, mother. Like, perfect abuse mentality. Like I should take the onus of all the shit that happens on myself, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and you also can't battle that, like you can't counter that because they don't know anything that's going on,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody who's in the ecosystem with you,
Yeah.
having had the same experiences and sort of validating your,
Yeah.
alarms going off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like it's so different. Okay, sure, we can go back home and narrate the day to whoever it is that we're living with. But
yeah,
someone actually being there and watching you go through something or going through it themselves, that's a whole different
yeah,
ball game. It just
yeah,
gives with it a whole different level of understanding and empathy that nobody
yeah,
else can give you. And
yeah,
when you top
exactly.
that with like a personal friendship where they really know who you are,
Yeah, yeah.
that I think just makes it so beautiful. But like you've had a ton of female bosses too, so have I.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, my experience has been mixed, you know.
Hmm.
I wouldn't
Same.
say, yeah, it's not been all
Hmm.
bad. I think where it's
Hmm.
been good, it's been great.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's been bad, it's been terrible. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like that extreme.
Hmm.
And I actually, now that I'm talking about it, I wonder if it's a woman thing, like where
I don't know.
sit
Maybe,
down.
dude. I feel like I don't know if it's, if it's a person thing or if it's a woman thing.
Hmm.
I feel like maybe at some level it is a person to person thing also. Like like for example, how you can't be friends with all your female colleagues,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
all your colleagues for that matter, whether they are men or women. But then there are some men of, like women colleagues you can be super thick with and have a great time, and find great comfort in their company. And I feel like the same sort of rule applies to your bosses as well.
Hmm.
I do personally feel like, on a hunch, sometimes it's easier to communicate a lot of things to your female bosses.
Hmm.
But to presume that they'll all understand and empathize and cut you slack for it
Hmm.
is not necessary. Like, I've actually had some male bosses cut me way more slack, uh, than maybe some female bosses. And like, I remember very early on in my career, at some point,
Hmm.
like when I was 23, 24, I was working in an organization where the female boss, as it is, was under a lot of scrutiny because, she was filling in a space, or like she had been appointed to an editor's position in a company that was like heavily driven and controlled by men.
Hmm.
And she had to also be answerable to a lot of these judgmental old school men. So I can't really blame her for being like on her tenterhooks and being on the edge all the time. And this was a supremely brilliant woman who came from a mostly feature op-ed entertainment background. Even though her knowledge was completely like wholesome, like she was 360-degree aware of what was going on in the world. But I guess because there were so many battles for her to fight to prove her mettle, that a lot of that trickle down effect came on flunkies like me, um, who she liked, but that didn't bode very well when she'd be in a tricky spot, because then I'd also double up as a punching bag. And
Hmm.
I clearly remember there was this one time I was sharing this with you, like at 2:30 in the morning during, the day the magazine had to go into publishing. Like, I went to her with a few pages and there were some changes. And man, she had a breakdown where she literally started blaming me and saying things like, you're just like everyone else. You're just like everyone else. And
Yeah.
I was like, what do I do? I didn't do anything,
Yeah.
ma'am. I just,
Yeah.
I'm doing my best. Like, what do I do to fix this? And like, in hindsight, I feel like the onus of her, meltdown or whatever it is that she was going through was
Hmm.
not on me. But, like, so yeah, there have been moments where there's been a lot of overwhelming aggression,
Hmm.
um, that's maybe been kind of misguided,
Hmm.
which I don't know. Sometimes people don't end up knowing how to deal with. And I don't know, at the receiving end of it, if there's somebody who's vulnerable or young, you
Hmm.
don't know who to like or how to sort of stand up to them. And I think in my case, it was specifically, done by a female boss. So that lasted a little, I mean, so that way maybe
Yeah.
her gender sort of like, comes to mind more than it being maybe a male boss. But yeah, I mean, I have to admit that, with a lot of male bosses, there's great discomfort in trying to make them understand, or communicating or being honest with them, which I've faced.
Hmm.
And there's a certain sense of, there's a certain patronizing big boys club energy that, I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid about this, or maybe, it's just me going on a limb presuming this.
Hmm.
I've also felt that. So
Hmm.
that way, I mean, I have to admit that working under a female boss never made me feel like an outsider
Yeah.
as much as working under a male boss has, in the past. Like, I feel like maybe women have to somewhere, uh, n- like, try slightly harder so that they are not taken lightly,
Yeah.
because of which, like, certain moments in their engagement with their colleagues either stick out, or I don't know how to paraphrase or how to like phrase this out well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as being included is concerned, yeah, I mean, working with a female boss has never left me feeling um like betrayed or shortchanged like that,
Yeah.
as opposed to working with, or being answerable to a male boss,
Yeah.
where I think the power dynamic is such that you just, I don't know, like, there's a certain like reluctance to completely trust them, or there's also a certain kind of like condescending, patronizing energy that I sometimes have
Yeah.
felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. I've only had one male boss.
Right.
And while um, I mean, eventually, I think there wasn't that discomfort between him and me because we also ended up becoming friends.
Hmm.
And there wasn't much of an age gap, so I don't think there was ever a point where he per se was patronizing or condescending, and or I felt that. But um, I did get that from other male seniors, you know,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
my
That's what.
direct boss, but the other
Hmm.
seniors who were
Yeah.
in the company. There was like it, that this very us versus them uh,
Hmm.
division
Yeah.
was very much in the air, you know.
Hmm.
And I also feel
Yeah.
like maybe that's why perhaps the experience of working with a male boss versus working with a female boss are so different, because you'll never have that kind of intimacy or candor with a male
Hmm.
boss that you would have with a
Yeah.
female boss,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
there is that much, where there is that kind of closeness, there's that much more
Yeah.
room for conflict also.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
you can sort of like come clean about a bunch of things,
yeah.
and somewhere they will hear you out, female bosses, because I feel like um, a woman to woman empathetic sort of like resonance somewhere prevails, which sort of makes it easier you as a colleague also to sort of approach them about a lot more, and them to sort of address it also, however empathetically they can,
Hmm.
so yeah. But
Yeah.
I do believe that, sometimes it's also a person to person thing, because as you're saying, the experience that you had with your male boss,
Hmm.
given his temperament and his equation with his colleagues, like there was comfort there, and you could, I'm sure, talk about a lot of things with him.
Yeah.
um so I guess, it matters from people to people also, like it change, like it has a lot to do with them as people at
Yeah.
the end of the day
Yeah.
also. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think with
yeah.
everybody, really, whether that's your boss,
Yeah.
colleague, a male
Hmm.
boss or a female boss, the individual personality does like play a huge role.
Hmm.
But certainly, I feel like, of course, there are so many conceptions about female bosses and female
Hmm.
colleagues. And I think sometimes it kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hmm.
You enter a job or you enter a field or a team with these notions just in your head, whether or not you
Right.
consciously believe in it or not. But I think, somewhere subconsciously it stays with you. And I wonder
Hmm.
if that plays out. I wonder if, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, do you feel like
uh
it ever happened to you that, at some level that maybe you're not aware of initially, or at some point you realize that, oh, maybe it is maybe I am feeding into this idea that women are catty and,
hmm.
competitive.
Well, maybe apart from like that one publication where I think the boss in question as a person liked a certain kind of sycophancy or a certain vibe in people that she related to, and was not very comfortable with a certain
Hmm.
other kind of people like doing well, or being in the limelight. This was like some 8 9 years back,
Hmm.
like a job I had in a tabloid, that I
Hmm.
was uh, at. Apart from that, I've never really felt, and even then, in spite of all her insecurities, she was not a very catty, limiting person. It's only when, like I don't know, like I don't know what triggered her moments of sort of pulling you back,
Hmm.
or purposely like gaslighting you into believing that you weren't giving it your all, even if you could be like doing twice the amount of work than
Yeah.
some of her favorite people. But then again, it's not a female thing. That happens with male bosses also. I've noticed that happen with my male bosses as well. Even like today, like I feel like to this day that hasn't changed. It's a person to person thing again.
Hmm.
And thankfully for me, most places that I've had the privilege of working under a woman or working with a female boss, they have never been restrictive like that. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
maybe yeah, because of, as you said, because there's a certain kind of comfort and a certain knowing of a slight opening up of like, or a slight uh, disclosure of vulnerabilities.
Hmm.
that sometimes, you know, lines have been crossed a little bit,
Hmm.
but not in a way where they have restricted my growth or they've, you know, been bitchy because they could,
Yeah.
and not in a way where I couldn't counter it
Yeah.
as a professional, you know. And I think that, as I, you know, said again, depends on people as individuals. Like, I don't know, if I was a guy working under a female boss, I don't know how would have I reacted to a situation like that.
Yeah.
But being a woman, being run by a woman, it was a lot easier to confront them and, you know, talk back per se,
Yeah.
or you know, come clean or just be honest about what I was feeling.
Yeah.
um so I never really faced limitations based on, you know, whatever little cattiness or whatever conflict there might have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, yeah, I mean, I'm sure experiences of men working under women must be slightly different, you know, like how it is
Yeah.
for
I
us
get
working.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One.
So, like, because I've never had the guts to actually very vehemently stand up to my male bosses, strangely, even if I've tried. I
Hmm.
don't know. It's just, it throws me off a little. Like, I don't know what to say. Also, you know, I've also kind of felt that they've stonewalled me, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing if roles were reversed and if there was a dude working under a woman, I don't know if they do the same thing as I do with male bosses.
Hmm.
So पता नहीं, मतलब
Hmm.
ये तो मेरा अपना personal थोड़ा experience है.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I mean, definitely. See, it's not about who's in power, right? Whether it's a man or a woman, it's more about how people around them perceive them and receive them, and also the kind
hmm,
of expectations that they have of them, right?
hmm, yeah,
So, what I'm saying is essentially is that there may be certain things that you would do with a female boss that you wouldn't with a male boss, like
yeah,
closure,
yeah,
like, you know, just
yeah,
being more yourself.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and perhaps there would even be certain expectations that you would have of a female boss that you wouldn't have of a male boss.
yeah,
There would be certain things that you would excuse a female boss for, but not a male boss for.
probably, yeah, yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
think I would tolerate yelling from a male boss. I would probably
right,
take it from a female boss,
right,
but I don't think
right,
I'd take it from a male boss,
right,
you know?
right,
Uh,
yeah,
at the same time, I would expect a female boss to understand me more than I would expect a male boss to understand me, you know?
yeah,
So I don't know if it's a win-win, lose-lose, win-lose situation and for whom, I really don't know.
hmm,
But I think more than, you know, how the person in power is or who the person in power is, it is the expectations of people around them. Um,
hmm.
so which also kind of goes back to my last question, you know, like I wonder if there are certain biases that we have had, you know, about female bosses, about women in power that have impacted the way we have interacted with them in the past or even now.
Mm, um, you know, I feel like I'm going to sort of agree with that whole self-fulfilling prophecy aspect that you mentioned.
Hmm.
That because I mean, maybe knowing the extent of being vulnerable and those vulnerabilities and those realities of your life that you sometimes end up like sharing with a female boss because of the comfort that you sometimes share with them,
Yeah.
um, sometimes can be held against you, because at the end of the day the power dynamic is such that you have to be accountable to them, and slip ups will not be dealt with ease. And sometimes those slip ups come from your, you know, either personality flaws or, you know, things that are happening in your life that they may or may not know about.
Hmm.
So somewhere, yeah, maybe I've felt that, okay, regardless of how I feel about them or how comfortable I am, maybe I should um, keep things as professional as they get, you know. Because
Hmm.
like letting or overstepping any boundary or letting someone else step your boundaries, like, can always create more chaos than is necessary or healthy in a workplace.
Yeah.
So basically, like, going back to the adage that, you know, try, or you can't be friends with your bosses.
Yeah.
And if you end up being friends with your bosses, it'll either come at a price, or it has to be a very clear demarcation of your personal equation and your professional equation.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you or your boss in question is not capable of delivering on those expectations or following those protocols, then it's not a great idea to sort of like have full disclosure, like about your life, or just have no boundaries in place.
Yeah.
So I think that's been my main takeaway with,
Hmm.
you know the jobs that I've had, and the people I have worked with, or the people I've worked under.
Hmm.
And a lot of it also goes, like into my relationship with my colleagues. Like, I can't just trust just about anyone. Like, you don't know what may be taken out of context where and put where, and what it may lead to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very particular about who I befriend
Yeah.
in professional spaces.
Yeah.
But apart from that, nah, there's no other like prejudice or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
I don't operate from any particular presumption or judgment like that against a particular gender. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, and I was thinking about this the other day, just randomly, is that another thing that I find super comforting about working with women, whether
Hmm.
that's, as someone who's my boss or someone who's under me, or a colleague who's at the same level, just working with women, is that there is no needless sexual tension, no worry that something you say will be misconstrued.
Yeah. Absolutely, that. And then
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about. That, you can be vulnerable. You
Yeah.
can talk about, your desires or escapades or whatever, without it being held against you, or you being judged or taken advantage of your vulnerabilities in any way,
Yeah. Yeah.
or becoming the gossip or whatever,
Yeah.
in a sexually like offensive way or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. Like, you
Yeah.
can let your guard down a little bit like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that just somehow can never happen with a male colleague. At least it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
happening for me,
Same.
There's always been a wall. I've always
Yeah, yeah,
been
yeah,
I've always been
yeah,
conscious that, I don't want
yeah,
to cross this certain boundary.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think the only time I did let it happen, when I was fairly new in the scene, like, career wise, and I was working under a bunch of people who were either my age or 1 or 2 years younger, who were my bosses in the supplements that I was working for. And
Hmm.
I remember uh, it didn't really go down very well. Like, I think, I don't know, people are generally judgmental, and I feel like if you're a woman working under somewhere men,
Yeah.
and making a strange impression about your life and your wants and needs or whatever, like, or talking too much about
Yeah.
your shortcomings, it didn't bode very well. Like, I was judged, and like, how? So yeah, that sort of left a very, very bitter taste in my mouth very early in life, to know that, okay,
Yeah.
this line can't be crossed or taken
Yeah.
for a ride,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, and like I had to do this in one of the places at one of the places that I worked at, where there were, it was a pretty like more or less equal gender ratio. So
hmm,
there were a ton of men also in the team. And I just feel like, when you have this one thing playing in your head,
hmm,
your
hmm,
productivity just somehow goes down. You can't, and especially when you're working in a creative field, you can't
hmm,
say whatever, you know,
hmm,
can't just be whatever. And if you
yeah,
always have to second guess what you're saying or what the other person is saying, you can't let your mind just work freely, right? Maybe
hmm,
some more, some like mechanical kind of jobs or some process driven jobs, this wouldn't play so
hmm,
much. But at least
hmm,
for me, I think that I need to be around people that I feel safe. And of course,
yeah,
you can do that with men, yes, of course. But
hmm.
I don't think it's as easy as it is
Yes,
with
absolutely.
yeah.
It takes a while to sort of get there and be sure of who
Yeah.
you're dealing with, and where they're coming from, or what is going to be, blown out of context, or taken out of context and used against you in which way possible.
Yeah. And at
So
what point?
yeah,
Like it may come
yeah,
to bite you in the ass a year, 2 years into your
yeah,
job.
exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and that's like quite sad, but it is what it is. I hope it changes,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
I hope we
Yeah.
figure out a way around it.
Well, I hope so too, man. I mean, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. There's enough awareness and there are enough laws and protocols and regulations in place and things like these still happen. So I don't know. Maybe we are all learning, but it's a slow process, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, human beings are just complex. Sometimes it
Yeah.
happens, right? Like there's nothing
Hmm.
bad about having sexual tension in
Hmm.
your context. That's not
Hmm.
there's nothing immoral about it or anything like that. But
Hmm.
to find that balance between
Hmm.
whatever it is that you're feeling, whatever your drives are, needs are,
Hmm.
and to be professional at the same time, I think that is the hard that is the challenge. uh,
Hmm.
but of course, like, I'm not talking about extreme cases. I'm not talking about cases of harassment here. That is
Right.
completely
Right.
different. uh,
Right.
but just generally, I'm talking about what it's like to work in a co-ed space where inevitably
Hmm.
there will be some sexual tension, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for some fields it may be okay.
Hmm.
It may be easy to work around it, not letting your productivity
Hmm.
suffer. And for some
Hmm.
people it may be easy to work around it and not
Hmm.
without letting your productivity suffer. But this has personally been a challenge for me, is where I'm like
Hmm.
holding myself back because there's a man in the room.
Hmm.
And I feel like I don't want to say something that's going to be taken the wrong way, or
Hmm.
I don't want to respond to something that he has said,
Hmm.
because I'm not really sure, if he's flirting or if he's,
Hmm.
being sexist, or like, I don't know
Hmm.
what's going on, right?
Yeah. And I
That
feel
is
like, within colleagues, it's still easier to suss them out and shut them up or whatever, take a decision or act upon something. But when the power dynamic is that of either you being the boss and a colleague doing that, or somebody who's under you doing that, or your boss doing it to you when you're working under
yeah,
them,
yeah,
it's just the power dynamic. I don't know. It's very rare that it is going to be taken or received in a positive way and will lead to something nurturing, or seems like it's coming from a nurturing place, because that's a little bit of a, it reeks a little bit of like flawed mentorship,
yeah,
or I don't know, it can create a certain kind of discomfort, like I feel
yeah,
personally.
yeah,
So
yeah,
especially in a position of power, like if somebody above you does it or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and with like women, you don't have that. So that, I think, is
Yeah.
like is a big plus, but also it's not ideal. Like, this should not
Yeah.
be an issue,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
should not be a thing, but
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if given a choice for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
you could only pick one, a,
Hmm.
one female boss, or a whole like series of female bosses, or only male
Hmm.
bosses, what would you pick?
I think definitely female bosses, yeah.
Why?
But like female bosses who can lead by example,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
No,
But
because
you
I
don't have a say
genuinely,
in that. You don't have a say in that.
huh?
You don't have a say in that. It could be
Uh,
the worst person ever, but a woman.
I don't know, yeah. Okay, this is a tough choice now. Yeah, okay, then I'm not going to be gender like biased. I mean, only capable bosses who can lead by example. That's it. I don't care which gender they belong to.
Okay.
As long as you can mentor me right, as long as you have a better idea and a better plan of what you want, and as long as you can bring out the best in me
Yeah.
or the best in your team, I am all for it. And
Yeah.
I feel like men, women both do that. There are people out there with a great caliber and a lot of heart and empathy and, you know, good mentorship skills,
Yeah.
which doesn't, come from like which gender they, belong to. So, well, yeah, so I think that is, I think that's the foundationally, that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, unfortunately, there are certain fields also that are, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever, I don't know. But I feel like this is a huge roadblock to gender equality
Hmm.
is how we divide certain fields by
Hmm.
male dominated and more female dominated, Like, even
Hmm.
in one field, take media, for example, the
Hmm.
editorial lifestyle space, more lifestyle
Hmm.
editorial, is female
Hmm.
dominated, right? But the
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
side of it, the growth side of it, is more
Hmm.
dominated,
Me
right?
dominated.
So
Yeah.
whereas women are running the show when it comes to creating the content and what
Hmm.
people are seeing and consuming, they don't,
Hmm.
there are not that many women who are involved in growing the business or
Hmm.
the business side of it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Even
That's true.
that is there, there's like this huge gender divide in,
Hmm.
when it comes to industries, but also within industries. And as long as it goes on like this, I think it's going to continue being very hard to work
Hmm.
in mixed gender spaces.
Right.
Because you
Right.
have to also address the big macro structure that we live in, right?
Hmm.
Which
Hmm.
unfortunately, when it comes to work, is still very much divided by gender.
Yeah. Yeah.
More in
Yeah.
some fields than others, sure. I think science and medicine are becoming more and more gender neutral, which
Hmm.
I think is excellent.
Hmm.
Um, but feels like, I mean, it's ironic that, media and publishing have really fallen behind when it comes to this.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that changes, man, because I feel like over time women have proven their leadership and how
Yeah.
wonderfully they can turn business and companies around with
Yeah.
their skill set and acumen and business acumen. So
Yeah.
I I can only wish that that changes over time and there is more
Yeah.
inclusivity
Yeah.
for us in
Yeah.
these spaces.
Yeah. And I think that'll happen as more and more women become their own bosses, like
Yeah.
you're doing, like I'm trying
Hmm.
to do, like
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
branch away from this institutionalized structure that we started
Hmm.
in, and start
Right.
new something of our own.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I think it's changing.